time ago that the best recipes don't come from cookbooks. They come from strangers who hand you a piece of something warm and say, "Here, try this." That happened to me once in Lyon, France. I was walking through the Saint-Antoine market on a bright Tuesday morning, one of those outdoor food markets that runs right along the river, with vendors lined up selling cheese and olives and bread and things I couldn't even name. My friend Marguerite had been going to that market for 30 years. She knew every stall. She walked me straight past the pastries and the fancy things and stopped in front of a small table run by a woman who didn't have much on it, just a few loaves of dark, dense bread wrapped in cloth and a handwritten sign I couldn't read fast enough before Marguerite was already buying a slice for each of us. I bit into mine standing right there on the cobblestones. It was nothing like the bread I was used to. Heavy, moist, a little sweet from something fruity inside. It tasted like it had been made by someone who cared very much what went into it, and not at all what it looked like. The vendor, a small woman named Céline, laughed when I asked what was in it. She listed things off on her fingers: carrot, zucchini, apple, banana, dates, oats, almond, no refined sugar, no preservatives, nothing she couldn't have grown or bought fresh herself. I didn't write a single thing down because I was too busy eating, but I didn't forget it either. I spent the better part of 2 years after I got home trying to rebuild that bread in my own kitchen, testing it, adjusting it, baking it on Sunday mornings, and making my husband sit down and tell me what was missing. He was a patient man. He ate a lot of bread during that period and never once complained. What I finally landed on is the loaf I'm going to teach you today. My name is Rosalie Jean, and I have been baking in a home kitchen for over 50 years. I am not a pastry chef. I never went to culinary school. What I have is a mother who taught me to make something from nothing, a grandmother who never bought a loaf of bread in her life, and 50 years of flour on my hands. That has always been enough. This bread right here, I call it my breakfast loaf, though honestly it works at any hour. This is the bread I make when I want to feed my grandchildren something real, something that will actually hold them through a morning. Not a Pop-Tart, not a packaged muffin with a list of ingredients you need a chemistry degree to read. This. And by the time this video is over, you are going to know exactly how to make it. Every ingredient, every step, the little tricks I learned the hard way, and one thing I'm going to save for near the end that makes the whole loaf come out right, every single time. Stay with me. Now, before we get to the recipe itself, I want to take 1 minute to talk about why this kind of bread works the way it does. Because if you understand the why, you'll never second guess yourself while you're making it. This is not a yeast bread. There is no proofing, no waiting for dough to rise, no punching anything down. This is what bakers call a quick bread, meaning it gets its lift from baking soda and baking powder, not from yeast. And that means the rules are different. With a yeast bread, you want to be patient. With a quick bread, you want to be deliberate but not fussy. You mix your dry things together, you mix your wet things together, and then you combine them. You don't overwork it, you don't beat it, you fold it together just until the dry disappears into the wet, and then you leave it alone and let the oven do the work. Here is the one idea I want you to hold on to. The leavening in this bread, the baking soda and the baking powder, starts working the moment the wet ingredients touch the dry ones. That reaction begins immediately, and it does not wait for you. So once you combine them, you go straight to the pan. You don't let it sit on the counter while you answer the phone. You don't stir it again because you think it needs it. You go straight to the pan. One idea: wet meets dry, you move quickly, the oven does the rest. That's the whole mechanism. That's all you need to know. Now let's make the bread. The first thing, gather your ingredients before you touch anything else. I know this sounds like obvious advice. It sounds like something a cooking show host says to fill time. But I am asking you to do it for a real reason. This loaf has a long ingredient list. Not a complicated one, but a long one. And if you get halfway through combining things and realize you're out of maple syrup or you forgot to buy almond flour, you are going to be annoyed with yourself. So we take 3 minutes at the start and we make sure everything is on the counter. Here is what you need for 1 loaf. This makes 8 generous slices. For the dry ingredients, 1 cup of flour. You can use a gluten-free blend or regular all-purpose. It works either way. 3/4 of a cup of almond flour or almond meal, and 1/2 cup of quick cooking rolled oats, also gluten-free if you need that. Then 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. For the wet ingredients, 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, 1/3 of a cup of pure maple syrup, 2 eggs, and 1 ripe banana mashed to a smooth paste. For the mix-ins, and this is where the bread gets its character, 3/4 of a cup of zucchini, grated on the large holes of your box grater, and then gently pressed with a paper towel to remove excess moisture. 3/4 of a cup of carrot, also grated on the large holes. 1 apple, peeled and cut into small cubes, nothing fussy, just bite-sized pieces. 1 cup of pitted dates, roughly chopped, and 1/2 cup of your preferred nuts, roughly chopped. Walnuts work beautifully, pecans are lovely, even almonds if that's what you have. That is the full list. Take a breath. It sounds like a lot, but most of it goes in at once, and the prep takes no more than about 20 minutes if you move at an easy pace. Now, set your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and let it preheat while you work. Position your rack in the center of the oven, not the top, not the bottom. The center is where the heat is most even, and this loaf needs even heat to cook all the way through without burning the outside before the inside is done. Grease a 10 by 5 inch loaf pan and line the bottom with a strip of parchment paper that overhangs on both long sides. That overhang is your handles. It makes getting the loaf out clean and easy, and it saves you from digging around with a knife and tearing the crust. The second thing, handle the zucchini properly and don't skip this step. Here is where most people go wrong with this loaf and with any baked good that contains raw zucchini. Zucchini holds an enormous amount of water inside it. When you grate it and add it directly to your batter without removing some of that moisture first, you are adding a cup of water you didn't account for to your recipe. The bread comes out wet in the middle, gummy. It doesn't slice cleanly. You think something went wrong with the baking, but what actually went wrong was the zucchini. What you do is this. Grate your zucchini on the large holes of the grater, not the small ones. The large holes give you strips that blend into the bread without disappearing completely. Then lay the grated zucchini on a few sheets of paper towel, fold the towel over the top, and press down firmly with the flat of your hand. Not a hard squeeze, just a firm, flat press. You'll be surprised how much liquid comes out. Do it 2 or 3 times with fresh paper towels if the zucchini seems very wet. You're not trying to dry it out completely. You just want to take the excess away. My mother used to do this with a clean kitchen towel, twisting the grated zucchini up inside it and wringing it gently over the sink. That works too. I've switched to paper towels over the years because it's less laundry. She would have had something to say about that, I'm sure. Do the same general care with your carrot, though carrots are naturally drier than zucchini, so they don't need pressing. Just make sure they're grated on the large holes so the texture stays interesting in the finished loaf. The third thing, keep your dry and wet ingredients separate until the very last moment and then combine them gently. In a large bowl, whisk together all your dry ingredients. Give it a good, thorough whisk so everything is evenly distributed. You don't want a pocket of baking soda sitting in one corner. That can give you a soapy taste in one bite and no lift anywhere else. In a separate bowl, a second large bowl, whisk together the wet ingredients, the half cup of oil, the 1/3 cup of maple syrup, the 2 eggs, and the mashed banana. Whisk until it's smooth and well combined. The banana will keep it a little lumpy no matter what you do, and that's fine. Just make sure there are no streaks of egg or unmixed oil sitting at the bottom. Now add the grated zucchini and the grated carrot to the wet bowl. Fold them in with a spatula. Then pour the dry bowl into the wet bowl. Not the other way around, because the wet bowl is bigger and gives you more room to fold without spilling. Use a large spatula and fold it together in slow, deliberate strokes. Scrape the bottom, turn it over, scrape the sides. You are looking for no visible dry flour. That's your signal to stop. Not smooth, not glossy, not perfectly combined, just no dry pockets remaining. That's it. That's done. Then add your apple pieces, your chopped dates, and your chopped nuts. Fold those in with the same gentle hand, just until they're distributed throughout the batter. And then, as I told you at the beginning, go straight to the pan, pour the batter in, smooth the top lightly with your spatula, and get it into that 350-degree oven without delay. The fourth thing, bake it low and long and test it before you trust it. This loaf bakes for 1 hour and 10 minutes. That is a long time compared to a muffin or a simple banana bread, but this is a dense, moisture-heavy loaf, all that fruit and vegetable inside it, and it needs the time. The outside will look done long before the inside actually is. That is normal. Do not be tempted to pull it early because the top is golden and the kitchen smells wonderful. That smell is not the signal. A clean toothpick is the signal. At 1 hour and 10 minutes, slide a toothpick or a thin skewer straight down into the very center of the loaf. Not the edge, the center. Pull it out slowly and look at it. If it comes out clean or with just a few dry crumbs attached, the bread is done. If it comes out with wet batter on it, give the loaf another 10 minutes and test again. Ovens vary, and this one will tell you the truth if you ask it the right way. Here is an honest caveat I want to share with you, because I believe in telling you the whole truth. This loaf does not have a firm, bread-like crust the way a yeast loaf does. It is moist by nature. That's part of its charm, part of what makes it so good for breakfast. But that means it needs to cool completely on a wire rack before you slice it. If you cut into it while it's still warm, it will seem underdone even when it isn't. The structure hasn't set yet. Give it at least 30 minutes on the rack, ideally an hour, before you slice. I know that's hard when the kitchen smells the way it does, but the patience is worth it. If you have some left over after the first day, and with grandchildren around, you may not, wrap it and keep it in the refrigerator. It holds well for 3 days in the fridge, and it freezes beautifully too. Slice it before you freeze so you can pull out one piece at a time and toast it in the morning. That is honestly one of my favorite ways to eat it. The fifth thing, use ripe fruit, and don't try to substitute your way out of the maple syrup. The banana in this recipe needs to be ripe. Not yellow ripe, brown ripe, the kind that sits on the counter for a few days past when you'd want to eat it plain, and the peel has gone spotty and dark, and the inside is soft and very sweet. That ripeness is not a flaw, it is flavor. A ripe banana gives you natural sweetness that does real work in this loaf, and the texture mashes smooth enough to blend into the batter without leaving lumps you can taste. The dates do the same thing. They are small pockets of deep caramel sweetness throughout the loaf, and they add a chewiness that plays wonderfully against the soft crumb of everything else. Make sure they're pitted. I mention this because I have bitten into an unpitted date at the wrong moment more than once, and it is not a dignified experience. Chop them into pieces roughly the size of a blueberry. Now, the maple syrup. I want to address this directly because someone always asks, can you use honey instead? Can you use agave? The answer is technically yes, but I want you to know what you're trading. Maple syrup has a particular flavor, warm, slightly woody, a little complex, that works with the spices and the fruit in a way that plain sweeteners don't quite match. Honey will make the loaf sweeter in a floral direction that isn't quite right here. Agave is neutral enough that it mostly works, but you lose something. If you have good maple syrup, use it. The 1/3 of a cup this recipe calls for is not a lot. It is not an extravagance. It is the right choice. The almond flour, by the way, is doing more than just adding structure. It is the source of most of this bread's protein and much of its fat, the good kind of fat, the kind that keeps a child full for 3 hours instead of 1. When your grandchild eats a slice of this in the morning, they are not just tasting something delicious. They are getting fiber from the oats and the flaxseed. They are getting natural sugar that releases slowly from the fruit, not from a package. They are getting something that will hold them through a morning at school without the crash that comes from a cereal bar or a packaged muffin. That was what Céline, that baker at the Saint-Antoine market, understood instinctively, the way a lot of older home bakers just do, without needing a label to tell them. She wasn't making a health food, she was making breakfast. And she understood that breakfast should actually feed you. I thought about her often during those 2 years I spent working on this recipe. I hope wherever she is, she'd recognize it. Now let me tell you what all of this means in practical terms. A standard loaf of specialty health bread at the grocery store, the kind in the natural foods aisle with seeds on top and a clean ingredients label, runs somewhere between $7 and $9 for a loaf that gives you maybe 10 thin slices. That works out to somewhere between 70 cents and 90 cents a slice. This loaf costs me roughly $4 to $5 in ingredients to make at home, depending on where I buy my dates and whether I use walnuts or something less expensive. It gives me 8 thick, generous slices. That's somewhere between 50 cents and 63 cents a slice, and my slices are bigger. But more than the money, and I want to be honest with you here because I know the money matters, it's the ingredient list. The loaf from the store has things in it I can't pronounce, preservatives to extend the shelf life, stabilizers so it ships without crumbling. Now here is your homework for this week. Make this loaf once, just once. Don't change anything the first time. Follow it exactly as I've given it to you and see what comes out of your oven. Then next time, maybe you try a different nut, or you swap the apple for pear, or you add a handful of dried cranberries. But the first time, make it straight. Let yourself learn the real thing before you start improvising. And then I want you to do one more thing. Cut the first proper slice, not a crumbling edge piece, a real center slice, and hand it to someone. A child if you have one nearby, a grandchild, a neighbor who always gets the end of the bag of chips instead of something real. Hand them that slice and watch their face. That's why we bake. Down in the comments, I want you to tell me this. What is one food your own mother or grandmother made for you as a child that you could have eaten every day and never gotten tired of? It doesn't have to be bread. It can be anything, a soup, a cookie, a thing she made on Sunday mornings that filled the whole house. Tell me, I read every single one of these comments, and those little stories are honestly some of the best parts of my week. Next time, I'm going to show you something that surprised even me when I first figured it out. A way to make a loaf that costs even less, keeps even longer, and somehow tastes even better on day 3 than it does on day 1. That one you will not want to miss. Until then, keep your kitchen warm, keep your ingredients honest, and always, always feed the people you love something real.